So suppose you're living in 1911 when Ford's Model T is quickly becoming the best-selling automobile on the road. Everyone adores you and regards you as the finest racing car driver in the country. Your fame and popularity urge you to team together and create a vehicle company that bears your name. The only problem is that you are no longer a part of the organization. Instead, you're left floundering amid the Great Depression's economic catastrophe, while your old firm is raking in millions of dollars. You find yourself working in their plant, barely making enough money to exist. This is the untold story of Chevrolet and its co-founder, Louis Chevrolet. A tragic story of how a man loved racing and engineered the first ever Chevrolet vehicle, but wasn't confident about his creation and sold it off to his friend. Now we bring you how this man, with whom the brand was named, didn't get to own it. Louis Chevrolet was born on December 25, 1878 in La Chaux-de-Fonds, Switzerland, but spent much of his boyhood in the little communities surrounding the Jura Mountain. Louis, the second of 7 children, would labor with his father, Joseph Chevrolet, who provided for the family by working in the timepiece industry. When Louis was 9, his family had an economic downturn, forcing them to leave their village and relocate to France. His father started a new watch business there, but he didn't make enough money to sustain a family of 9. Things became increasingly tough for the Swiss family over time, to the point that they frequently went days without eating. This prompted Louis to drop out of school at the age of 11 and find employment at the Robin Bicycle Workshop, which specialized in repairing bicycles and carriages. There, he rapidly mastered the fundamentals and began mending bicycles at an early stage. By the age of 16, Louis had developed his own bicycle, the Frontenac, which he raced in numerous local races, frequently finishing first. His ability and victories not only provided food for his needy family, but also inspired a drive for speed. During the spring of 1897, Louis was dispatched to the Hotel de la Poste to repair a steam-powered bike owned by an American. This trike was one of the earliest autos at the time, causing quite a commotion across the region. When Louis arrived, he was astounded by what he had just experienced and fell in love with vehicles. The American whose trike he had skillfully mended was none other than William Vanderbilt, grandson of Cornelius Vanderbilt, and one of the wealthiest men of his day. Vanderbilt was delighted by young Chevrolet's talents and aptitude and pushed him to come to America. Louis finished developing another bicycle, the Gladiator, in 1899. This masterpiece drew the attention of a manager at the Darroch automaking firm, who hired Louis to work at the company's factory in Paris. He learned the fundamentals of internal combustion and 4-stroke engines at Darroch. There are claims that he worked for other firms like De Dion Bouton, one of the most prominent French automobile manufacturers at the time. Whether true or not, this was only one step toward completing his dream. Louis crossed the Atlantic Ocean with the money he earned in Paris. Louis secured a job at an engineering workshop in New York, courtesy of a fellow Swiss immigrant named William Walter. After a few months of working for Walter, Louis Chevrolet decided to move on and began working at the American branch of De Dion Bouton. Unfortunately, the branch was closed down the next year and Chevrolet had trouble finding new employment. Louis persuaded his remaining relatives to migrate to America when his father died about this time. But it would all change in 1905. Chevrolet joined the American arm of the Italian manufacturer Fiat that year. Fiat was quickly becoming one of the world's leading automobile businesses at the time, and Louis was employed to do his favorite thing: join the company's auto racing squad. His passion for engines reached new heights during his tenure at Fiat, and he rapidly established a reputation for himself as a reckless racer with little to no regard for his own safety. His first trip on the track was in a timed event at Morris Park where he drove an underpowered Fiat. He surprised everyone by breaking the 1-mile world record. Louis returned to the circuit a few months later, but this time in a race against some of the country's greatest drivers. It was a widely publicized event, and after previously breaking the 1-mile record, many people were eager to see how Chevrolet would do in a race, and he did not disappoint, taking first place. Louis Chevrolet's racing abilities caught the attention of businessman William Durant. Together with Louis' brother Arthur, they built a car company, Chevrolet Motor Company, in 1911. Louis wanted to construct racing vehicles for the firm, but William Durant was adamant that they focus on high-volume, low-price cars, as Henry Ford was demonstrating with the Model T. He tried to persuade Louis that it would generate revenue and establish their brand as an institution, but Louis argued that the name stood for racing. Their meeting was never entirely concluded, and they postponed their disagreements until another day. Louis Chevrolet continued to travel across the country marketing his automobile, and by the time he returned, William Durant had rebuilt the firm to make low-cost cars without Louis' permission. Louis was offended, and another quarrel erupted between the two founders. Louis had made a decision that would cost him his whole future. He sold his ownership in the firm, foregoing the chance to become one of America's wealthiest men. Louis Chevrolet utilized the proceeds from his selling to establish the Frontenac Motor Company in 1915. Louis and his younger brother Gaston dominated the racetrack for several seasons owing to their engineering. And by 1920, the siblings had won the country's largest racing trophy. Gaston, the youngest brother of Chevy brothers, died in a racing accident in Beverly Hills in 1922. Louis was so heartbroken and distraught about the death of his younger brother that he vowed never to race again. His wealth began to dwindle after that. He had no option but to declare bankruptcy shortly after that, yet he still survived. Chevrolet Motors, on the other hand, outsold Ford in the early 1930s due to their new model. Chevrolet Motors was quickly becoming one of the world's most known brands. Ford, Chevrolet, and Chrysler were the top 3 vehicle sales in America at the time, and they were making a lot of money. By the 1930s, Louis Chevrolet was impoverished and jobless during America's greatest economic crisis, and with no other options, he returned to work at the fast-growing firm he once created. There was no jubilant greeting or anything like that. Instead, he was hired as an ordinary mechanic on the Chevrolet assembly line. He died of a heart attack in 1941 at the age of 63 and was buried in Indianapolis near the racing circuit that he once loved. Our decisions in life are important, and one wrong move may alter our courses permanently. Louis Chevrolet started out with so much potential, but with a snap of a finger, he lost everything that he has worked hard for, but his name would live on for generations. If you want to hear more success or tragic stories on how the most world-renowned brands came to be, show us your support by giving this video a like, leaving a comment on who you want to know about next, and sharing it with all your friends. Also, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell icon if you want to keep posted on our latest videos. See you soon!